We welcome you to Penn State University as we get ready for another version of a roundtable with some of the greatest coaches in college volleyball as we are in the midst of our Big Ten Pac-12 Challenge. We're going to have a great time. We've done this a couple of years ago, and we thought now that we're back at volleyball in full strength that we would do it again. I want to introduce the coaches that are with me. My name is Dean DeVore. I've been the voice of Penn State volleyball for 25 years or so. And so it is a pleasure for me to be here to do this because not only are these gentlemen great volleyball coaches, but in some ways, many of them have become really good friends. And so I want to start down at the end there with Jeff Nygaard. He's in his 8th year as the USC head coach, assistant there for 5 previous years before that. Jeff's a 3-time Olympian, 2-time NCAA champion with UCLA, where he was also 2-time National Player of the Year. I think the first player to do that, right? 2 consecutive years, Jeff?
I think allegedly that's true.
That is true,
I'm pretty
right?
sure Brian Ivey may have accomplished it as well.
Okay.
So I'm not quite certain.
All right. And then right beside him, his teammate at UCLA for those 2 national championships, now the head coach of UCLA, John Speraw, also known as our USA men's volleyball coach, has been so for the last 3 Olympiads and then was the assistant for the Olympiad before that. John, welcome.
Thanks, Dean. Great to be here. It was fun doing this last time, so excited to hear the conversation.
And Kevin Burch is next. Kevin from Ohio State. You know, we've talked about this. I've known Kevin. So Kevin played at Ohio State. Then he went away and started doing, you were what, assistant coach, a volunteer at Ohio State. Then you went to Springfield, where they won an NCAA championship. Then you spent a year at UC Irvine. They won a national championship. Then you went to Springfield again. They won another national championship. Then you came here to Penn State as our director of volleyball operations for the women. They won a championship. And then went back as an assistant coach to Ohio State, won 2 championships, which I announced both those, so I was the good luck charm. So Kevin's seen a lot of great volleyball. Kevin, welcome.
Thank you. You just prove it's better to be lucky than good.
Well, and maybe you're being around me and some other great people. And finally, our host for this weekend, he's been involved in all aspects of Penn State men's volleyball as a player, assistant coach, head coach, and he's one of the most winning and most respected coaches in the sport. Mark Pavlik, 29 years now as the head coach of the Nittany Lions here in 2023. You've been around the block, my friend. You've seen it all.
Yeah, I'm a little bit worried. The last time we did this, if you guys remember, was January of 2020. It was probably the super spreader event. So I think we probably should get out a warning to the National Institute of Health. We're doing it again. Who knows what's going to happen this
I don't know. We're going to spread a lot of fun and good times. I guess the thing that I want to put out there right away is how exciting is it to be part of volleyball right now? Great growth, amazing growth, fastest growing sport in America and by a lot of categories. An amazing time for world volleyball, Olympic volleyball, professional volleyball. It's all coming together. This is an exciting time. Let's riff on that. Go ahead. Who's most excited in this room about volleyball right now?
Most excited?
Yeah.
Well, I can jump in on that.
Go ahead.
Just to share a snapshot, I go into the NTDP and you see the talent, the physicality, the level, and you know that the future of men's volleyball in America is going in the right direction. And you could even say that for the women's side of the game, too. It's just everywhere you look, you see bigger, better, faster, stronger, and the level and the physicality, the numbers, and it's across the board. It's not just the players. It's the people getting involved in coaching, top to bottom. So it's an exciting time to be around it.
Speaking of that, I looked at the rosters. There's only 2 players out of all the players in this weekend that are under 6 foot. And I don't think I remember that, that's an amazing change over the last, 10 years?
Yeah, I agree with Jeff. They're getting bigger, faster, stronger. And I think the ball contact that you see at the younger levels is better than it's ever been. And, they're growing. The game is growing. I think we're starting to market the men's game based on physicality now. And I think there's just so many different ways that kids can look at the game being played internationally, nationally, collegiately, where they're seeing some just unbelievable physical talent.
And I think part of that, John, is the inclusivity of volleyball because, there's this level, there's the high level, but then there's the family-friendly level, too, that we play in our backyards, and then somehow all comes together, and that popularity, I think, helps where people are familiar with the game from their own family and friends, but then they can appreciate the highest levels. Does that make sense?
It does. I think we've talked about that for years, how a lot of people play the sport, but are they really connected from an entertainment perspective and coming to the matches and watching these guys play? We've always said if you can get somebody in the gym watching men's volleyball live, it's a pretty big hook because people really appreciate the physicality that Mark referenced. And so I agree with you 100%, Dean. There's a lot of momentum here. I think for me the most exciting aspect of growth over the last year is within the last year we've sanctioned high school championships in 7 states.
Wow, that's great.
And so you're seeing this. That's a way for kids to play. They don't have to pay. There's access for more and more kids, and it's happening organically in a lot of those situations. And so I think we're really, really excited about what's happening.
And part of that is movement because, it used to be the West Coast guys stayed on the West Coast, the East Coast guys stayed on the East Coast. Kevin, you grew up in California, right? And then you came east to play for Ohio State. You've been all around. So that kind of ability for anybody to play anywhere now in great high-level volleyball is a big key as well, I think.
Yeah, I think a lot of it has to do with the media that's, live streams, making everything accessible. And, but I think there's also a lot of people that are trying to grow the game in different areas. I mean, Ohio is a perfect example. We have 40 new programs, high school programs this year alone because of the work that's gone into to sanction boys volleyball in Ohio. And, we're just one of, like Speraw said, one of 7 new states that are sanctioning now. So the amount of work that's going in is playing a big part in that.
Has the, just go around the room on this one too, has the complementary situation now with different kinds of volleyball. So, we've added beach volleyball on the women's side collegiately. Beach volleyball has had its own place. It's getting more popular. So with these different styles and different things, is that all playing into the popularity? Or John is someone who's the coach of our national team in the indoor sport. Are you seeing benefits of that other style of play with the indoor game? So let's start around the room. Let's start with Jeff on some of those thoughts, and we'll come around to John and then Kevin and Coach.
I could just draw upon my personal experience. For me, having boys volleyball from Wisconsin was the conduit for getting an opportunity to go out to California. And then once you get to California, at that point, that opened up the doors for everything that I've been able to do with volleyball. So adding those 7 just gives more exposure. And to your point with just beach volleyball, the more volleyball that's out there, the more exposure. Because one of the challenges has always been the perception that men's volleyball is an Olympic-only sport, as if we just have it for the Olympics and then 3.5 years between those, it just rolls up and goes away. But the more you have, the more exposure you get, the more you're going to have players, the more the consciousness, the more awareness is going to be in America. So all of these different factors are rolling into what you're alluding to.
John, have you seen the benefit on the level that you coach for the Olympics and those kinds of things from more volleyball appreciation there?
Yeah, I think the key term, which has been mentioned a couple times, is just exposure, and all the means at which young kids can watch volleyball. When I was growing up, there was no way to actually watch volleyball. In fact, even when we graduated UCLA, there was no way for me to even get video over to Europe to procure an agent to see if I could go play. I remember how cumbersome that was because I had to actually mail out VHS tapes. And, and now a kid can be at home and just pull it up on YouTube or just go through highlights on TikTok and just have reel after reel after reel. And I think it's allowing fans just to see more and more volleyball. And Pav could probably talk to it. I understand that a lot of the women's coaches in the Big Ten felt like they're starting to sell out their arenas because of the Big Ten network. Somebody was sitting at home, exposed to volleyball for the first time and thought, hey, this is something I maybe want to take my family to. And now you're seeing it at the international level. I think what we've really needed from an exposure perspective is intentional effort, and whether that's through intentional marketing through social media, whether that's intentional effort from really professional organizations. What CVC Capital did this year, investing into volleyball world with the FIVB and the product that they're creating and the way that they're doing that, I think is potentially game-changing for our sport. And so everybody needs to be watching Volleyball World TV and support that effort. It's the biggest thing that's happened to our sport ever. And but you talk to my family, I mean, they've been around volleyball for a while, but their experience and access to everything I'm doing on the national team isn't even something they've been able to do very much recently. And now they can see every match, and it's produced in a really high-quality way.
Very high-quality way, yeah.
Yeah, it looks like an ESPN broadcast, and that's what we've needed. We've needed credibility through professionalism, and I think you're starting to see that now.
Kevin, thoughts on all of this right now?
Well, I think one of the unique parts about our sport is that we have, you can play in the grass, you can play in the sand, there's multiple different opportunities to start playing the game. I think it's a big reason why it's so big in Southern California, among other reasons, but you can play on the beach and pick the game up. So it's exposure, but it's also opportunities to play. There aren't golf, you can only play on one course, right? You can't, same thing with other sports. So I think it's partly unique to us, and I think it's something that we've been able to take advantage of and help promote the sport.
And I think one of the more underrated effects that we're experiencing through this generation, we've talked about how Title IX has affected men's volleyball over the years. I think we're on a benefit roll with Title IX. Last year, 3 of our guys had moms that played volleyball.
Wow.
We had Canyon Tubman, Molly Driesbach was Kentucky national team. We had Charlotte Fisher, Cal's mom, who still holds the career ace record at Eastern Kentucky. Oh, wow. Yeah, 440. Fish is never going to touch that one.
No, but he was serving like he was trying last night.
He's got a minimum amount of time to try to make that up.
That's right. That's why.
And then on top of that, like I said, we had Tubman, we had Fisher, and we have Will Coons' mom, who was an All-American at Gannon. She still holds the career Gannon kill record. So after Coons got his first kill last year, he was only 1,900 behind his mom. But I think we're seeing the women that played volleyball, at the beginning of the Title IX and the growth of the women's game, have their sons, and say, this is a pretty good game. Come along with us. And it'd be interesting to see over the years how that's affected you three. How many moms played the game, and are we getting their sons that have been literally drug along the tournament since they were this high? And I think that's going to be a benefit for us.
Definitely. And certainly one of the benefits to me lately has been the ability for college players on both sides, men and women, to go and play internationally and really make money, have success, play a long career. And then I think, to me, that takes the interest from someone who is a Penn State fan and then gets to follow 2 or 3 men on the men's side and 2 or 3 women every cycle on the women's side through either international play through Team USA or then to these other teams, which that's all produced now. And you can watch European volleyball and all the leagues, amazing, like an ESPN broadcast. So that, to me, has been a big boon for this sport and kind of a thought where a kid can look at it and say, hey, I have a future that I can do something professionally in volleyball. I didn't know that was existed before. Right, Jeff?
I see with the landscape, when we're talking about the access, you get to see all the professionals, you get to see all the access that's over there. And so it's not just this ethereal thing. So when you're coming up and playing volleyball, you can watch a team in Italy, you can watch a team in Russia, you can watch all the national teams in exposure. And I think that planting of the seed of something that's just beyond, here's high school, here's your track record to go to college, and then you can go to a national team or international, all that stuff. You can have a legitimate career being a volleyball player as a professional, and you can see what even the lifestyle is, right? Tracking Shoji, tracking Micah, and just seeing how they're living their lives. And so you're getting that mentorship, you're getting that I can identify, I can watch that player, and I say, that's what I want to be and what I want to do. And you could kind of couple that together with the growth of the women's sport and saying what Carrie and Misty were able to do and had this groundswell effect as you play it forward as to why there's so much going on with the women's game as well. So just that inclusivity, just that exposure. I mean, we're just using these buzzwords over and over again, but just think about that kid that now has an access to playing high school volleyball in a state that's never afforded it before, and all of a sudden they can say, I can be the next Micah Christensen. And there's that pathway and how to do it and what it looks like. And there's even probably a connectivity. You could probably reach out to Micah and he'd even just have a conversation with you.
Absolutely. They're very accessible and very friendly. And that's the hallmark of volleyball. It's the friendliest sport I know. But we can talk about that in another segment. But John, riff on this.
I think Burch's comment, too, about opportunities to experience the sport as a player is really important, too. So we talked about exposure, but opportunity. And so we've mentioned that if you see it as a fan, you watch the men's game in particular with its physicality, it's a hook. I think we're seeing kids that if they have the opportunity to play it, it's really, really fun. And so I think those are the things that I'm most excited about. They talk about the most popular sports and why, and soccer is number one. And it's because, and you can see this, you could be in a favela in Brazil and tie a ball of rags together, and the kids are out
and they're playing
in a dirt lot.
Yeah.
And then you have basketball, which all you need is yourself and a hoop and a ball. And volleyball is probably the next one down. And you need a net and a ball, and you probably need two people. But you can make it happen with just a rope and throw the ball over the rope. And so there are some reasons why, if we continue to work intentionally on growing the game and offering this opportunity to kids, there's a lot of them that are going to find that this is what they want to do. And when that happens, then we're going to continue to see this grow.
Kevin, when you recruiting players right now, are there discussions more and more about opportunities? Well, if I do well here at Ohio State, what are my opportunities going forward? How can you help me with that? Are those part of your recruiting discussions now?
Yeah, and I'm sure it's the same for these guys. I mean, I think what I don't have really to compare it to is, when you guys were playing, how many guys were aspiring or even thinking of playing pro. But I'd say at least half our recruits discuss, the dream of playing pro and playing overseas after they're done playing. So, I think certainly all the factors that were mentioned have a big factor, in that increase. But certainly the opportunity and the accessibility to media and being able to watch has a big part of it.
It came to fruition at Penn State, I think, 1998 when, after winning the championship, 2008, after winning the championship, Matt Anderson decides to go play professionally. And I think it caught a lot of people, at least in our world in volleyball, off guard. It's like, oh, that's even an opportunity. And so just think where we've come from 2008 to 2022, and now it's part of the conversation over half of the recruits.
It is. I think all of us go through that. And I think, like Jeff had mentioned earlier, the physicality level of the grassroots level that we're recruiting from. You look at somebody and you say, yeah, that's an arm, or that's somebody that's touching 12 feet that you can't coach. And I think there are more and more of those kids coming. And then on top of that, what Jeff and John have done in their international and Olympic careers is, you have two guys that are two of the most friendliest people out there. They're willing to answer any question, be part of any, and that's bled over to this current generation of international players. Max, Maddie, Aaron, we know will do whatever we ask them to do with young kids and our teams. And I think it's the same with the Bruins and the Trojans that are out there too. And I just think that this, we said it earlier, the friendliness, the social fabric that volleyball and specifically the men's game is made of, I think is really coming back to help us in this era of growth.
Hey, Dean, can I hop in here on this?
Absolutely, please.
Talking about access and seeing what could be accomplished after your career. And
right.
As everyone was talking, I just realized that last year we had several players that were Danny Matheny was our fifth middle on our roster. He's playing professionally in Denmark right now.
Wow.
Ian Parrish was our fourth middle. He's playing professionally in the Netherlands right now. Sam Berge was our fourth and then our third at the end of the season outside hitter, and now he's playing in Israel. So here are some opportunities for guys that weren't the All-Americans, didn't even start their whole careers, and had opportunities to go play overseas. So I think that's the point that you were trying to get to, is there is a lot more opportunities for young men to go and experience Europe and play professionally before they come back and start their lives.
20 minutes into this conversation, we're flying through here. I want to just do a quick reset. We're talking with Jeff Nygaard, the head coach of USC, John Speraw, the head coach of UCLA, Kevin Burch, the head coach of Ohio State, and Mark Pavlik, the head coach of Penn State. This is the Big Ten Pac-12 Challenge, roundtable discussion with these gentlemen. We've been talking kind of far-reaching and kind of overall volleyball, but I want to talk now about the men's game and specifically about the men's collegiate game because as we sit here, we're on the verge of those two gentlemen coming to the Big Ten in a couple of years with their two programs, USC and UCLA, and a potential shift in the paradigm of what we're going to do conference-wise in this sport or how we're going to look at the sport. We've grown the sport. We've added some conferences. We're now up to 7 teams that make the NCAA championship over a week-long situation between Divisions I and Divisions II. Are we at the cusp of changing the dynamic in terms of conferences or alignment? I know there's talk about going east versus west. There's all kinds of things out there. So let's just run it. Who's got the magic ball? Who is going to know what this looks like collegiately in 2 years? Who's got the answers? Anybody? Oh, they're all pointing to Pav. Go, Pav.
I think there's a couple of things. The 24 NCAA championship is up to 12, so we'll have 12 teams now that have a pathway to the NCAA men's volleyball championships. What that looks like has yet to be determined.
In terms of automatic versus automatic qualifiers and then at-large and that kind of thing, or format in total?
The format in total, we'll have a field of 12 teams.
Okay.
And however that's going to be distributed with conference champions, with at-larges, the NCAA will follow its own rules that they have in place for pathways that are required for various teams. And then on top of that, I guess the big question is, are we finally going to be comparable to other NCAA championships where there are regionals that feed into a Final Four, Final Six, whatever they decide to do. So I think that's exciting. I think we're all kind of waiting to see what kind of input we can give on that. I think the other thing, specifically as far as Big Ten men's volleyball goes, I think with the success that the Big Ten has had with women's volleyball, where they know they have a volleyball crowd there, and like these guys have said earlier, you get somebody into a high-level men's match, they're hooked. The physicality is different. And I think that hopefully we have some forward-thinking athletic directors and presidents and chancellors in the Big Ten that can sit there and say, this is the fastest-growing high school sport in the country, where everybody recognizes the big drop-off that's coming in high school population, that I think a lot of colleges are going to be trying to make sure that they're prepared for.
Explain that drop-off. What do you mean?
Well, the number of kids that are out there that are going to be considering college, it's hitting a wall that's there going to be a lot more competition for the brains out there.
Okay.
So anything I think colleges can do to make themselves more attractive, and sometimes adding popular sports are going to be part of that for schools that are enrollment driven. And I know we have some of those in the Big Ten that don't have the 40,000 that we have, but I think that's going to play a role in this. And I think men's volleyball can add to a university's standing, can add to the mission that particular university is looking for. Like I said, I think some forward-looking ADs and chancellors and presidents, with the help of probably the men's coaches and the women's coaches over the next couple of years, it would be fun to have a Big Ten men's volleyball championship. I mean, the four of us in this room we'd get to see each other at least twice a year, if not more.
You guys up for that? Kevin, your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I remember that we were at Nationals this last summer when we found out that you guys were joining the Big Ten. And my phone blew up. I don't know about you guys. I'm sure it did too. I mean, the level of excitement for the sport and for the possibility of Big Ten men's volleyball is off the charts and still is. And I think there's a lot of people that are really excited and about the idea of it. And those same people are working really hard to keep it top of mind. I talked to our men's lacrosse coach, who they followed a similar path going to the Big Ten.
Right.
And he had a pretty interesting stat that, the 5 years before they went Big Ten for men's lacrosse, they had 5 nationally televised games. The first 5 years they were in the Big Ten, they had 48 nationally televised games. So that means just the amount of exposure that can give our sport is, with our brands, the way it already is off the charts.
So that's the perspective east of the Mississippi on this. Let's go west. John, your thoughts?
Personally, I thought it was bold and visionary. I didn't know anything about it like most people. And my wife showed me the Instagram that went out, and it said Big Ten with, the blue and gold, and I literally was just ecstatic. I mean, ecstatic at what that was for our institution, for the opportunities for our game and volleyball at our school, but also more broadly. I think you started off with your question, Dean, about what do we all think is going to happen here, who has the magic ball. I think a lot of people would like to have that magic ball for the collegiate sports landscape.
Because we need it by next year, don't we? I mean, we need it by 2024.
There's a lot of real uncertainty about the collegiate sport landscape in general, but I think we just have to stay focused on what we can do for our game and how we continue to grow it. I mean, it's so interesting because there's so much uncertainty, and yet there's so much opportunity with our game. That's how you started off this podcast. This is where the game is exploding, yet there's uncertainty about how Olympic sports will fit in when football players are potentially employees. Where does that leave Olympic sports? So there's some big, big questions. At the same time, where you have CVC capital and where you have exploding growth on the boys' side, where you have arenas that are being filled on the women's side, and we feel like we can access that fan base, where you now have all these iconic brands coming to the Big Ten. That now if you have Big Ten men's volleyball, that would be the biggest thing that would happen in collegiate men's volleyball in the United States. I know World of Volleyball is interested in Big Ten men's volleyball content. They want our matches, so they would love to see it. So this is such an opportunity for us. We're all really excited about it. We're all, I think, probably at times a little apprehensive about where everything is going, and if you find that magic ball, we'd like to have another podcast.
Well, yeah, we'll schedule it right away. Jeff, same thoughts or a little different view? Because I know not everybody is in lockstep with all of this.
Well, the way that I'd look at this is we're all talking about the growth of our game as status quo, and then the inertia of a Big Ten where it could be a flagship in a lot of ways, where you've merged all four media markets and we're in NIL space, and the unlocked potential of the production that we could tie into with what the Big Ten women's side of the game is. And again, exposure and the professionalism that it just presents our sport with that would come along with that. I see the potential of that as being something that's uncharted. Like, again, like the Magic 8 Ball. So what does that even look like? But I know there's some smart people that are working at above and below all different layers. And that's something that's been really interesting to me, is to see how many different layers go into a decision like this. But there's so much momentum at so many of those layers. Can this happen? Will this happen? How does this happen? That we just got to be ready for it.
Are you getting any input from former athletes or current athletes about this and what they want, or how they can get involved? I mean, this to me, volleyball is a group effort in terms of advancing it, and we've got a lot of alumni now who are done well in their careers and have some influence and those kinds of things. So is that one of the places that you're going to get this support to get the right fit?
I think if you look at the more visionary / older alum, they have a sense of how big this could be for our sport. And then as you go down to like the student athletes of the day, where they're more interested in how does this impact them for their studies, how does it impact things for travel. And just today, to me, this trip alone is a litmus test in a lot of different ways for a sense of how that would actually go.
Right.
We go to Penn State, but my feedback to the administration was I don't think it's going to be that impactful, because we can be smart about scheduling. It doesn't mean that we have to go out to Penn State one day and then come back the next week and go to Ohio State. We can toggle it such that it's one trip east, one trip west for everybody, and we can get like something in both swings. So it's not that impactful.
And we're doing that. We've been doing that
exactly.
already.
We already got the template in place, so it's like it's not going to be that catastrophic from that standpoint. And yes, we do need to bring jackets so that we can come out and be warm, but I don't see it being that impactful. I think them being smart enough with their ability to market themselves with the NIL space, all those things, they're going to very quickly see the potential of things from that standpoint.
Well, I think that's been a key too to all of this, is the amount of back and forth, not only by players, I brought that up with Kevin earlier, but the teams that have been willing to come. You know, the West Coast teams have been always willing to come in the last decade or two, a trip or two. Pav's always taken his team out one week, gone to Hawaii, and so that cross-country exposure over the last several years has been great for the sport. I think helped grow it, and certainly, as you said, has provided the template and the blueprint for what we may be doing here in the future, John.
Sure, and I think it really is probably the last 10 years, huh, Pav? I don't remember it happening before that, but it seems like we've been more willing to do that. Now you have asynchronous classes; they can all online. I'm with Jeff. I know there has been on our side some criticisms of the move to the Big Ten. I think you see some old viewpoints of the Pac-12, and I think a lot of nostalgia for the Pac-12 and those rivalries within that conference, and people are reluctant to leave, and I see that. I can understand that. There's a lot of history there. I just look at the landscape and how much it's changing, and I've been trying to really focus on that over the last few years because I really want this sport to succeed, and I think we need to pay attention. And for me, this was an absolute no-brainer for us. This is what we needed to do, and we need to find solutions, and we'll find solutions. We'll figure out how to schedule. We'll buy the jackets. We'll do what we need to do. I agree. This is not that complicated. Kids have gone to professors with letters saying, "Hey, I'm traveling," for years, and so the trip will be a little bit longer, and they'll have online classes. You should see what my guys were doing, even studying for midterms this week. They have their iPads. It's crazy what technology has done to changing the study environment. They have their iPads while they have a lecture that's going on their computer, and they're taking notes, and they got concurrent windows going up, and it's amazing what they're capable of doing on the road, and still accessing education, still moving their career forward. And I think it's all good.
Yeah, Kevin, is the opportunity to compete at that highest level with these additional great teams, I mean, that's got to be a selling point now for you to go out on the road. And can you feel that excitement from the recruits and the people that are coming up and saying, "Oh my goodness, this is going to be an amazing opportunity to be at Ohio State, and now we're going to bring these great teams even more so into our gym"?
Yeah, I mean, I think anytime you have our brands in one gym, it's exciting for everybody involved. And certainly, it's been that way for our recruits. It's been that way for our alumni, for our donors. And those alumni and donors are going to play a big factor in whether we're able to do this or not. Because even with the technology, we're still going to need funds to get it off the ground and get going. So, the amount of support and excitement from recruits, players, alum, administration's been great about it. They've kept an open mind and want to try and make it work. And I think that's probably the most exciting part to me is just how much it's being talked about. And again, it's when there's a will, there's a way, and there certainly seems to be a will from a lot of people involved.
What is there like a fire burning under that? There's a good push from all these people. I know, like, you guys can't really too much worry about that right now. You're in the heart of your season, but are you checking in on this, Pav, with your administration and other people in these levels to have these discussions? Is that how much of a part of your day is that now?
I think it's always an underlying part. Once we get into the season, that kind of everything takes a back seat to that. But for us, Pat Kraft has been here. He and I have talked about it. Even when the news broke, when Sandy Barber was here, she and I talked about it. I think that constant, if we can keep it on the front burner and just make sure that the decision makers can forward their advocacy to the people above them that can help make the decision. That's probably where I see our role as being. If it were up to us four, I think we're in. Nygaard has the schedule all set up. Speraw has the parkas ordered. We're good to go. But as we know, that there are people that are going to make the decision that are above us, and hopefully we can provide them with the necessary information to make it a really good decision.
Anybody else, before I move on to something else, thoughts about this, volleyball's future on the college level?
Excited about this, Dean. Excited about the potential of Big Ten men's volleyball and just figuring out a way to help make that happen. And whether that's talking to our ADs, whether that's fundraising, I don't know exactly what that process will ultimately entail, but I know all four of us are enthusiastic about doing anything we can to make it happen.
All right, let's talk a little bit about opportunities to learn and play that you would like to see improved on the level. So, we're seeing more and more opportunities, but we can continue to grow that. So where do we need? We're hearing more and more high schools adding. We're hearing more and more state sanctioning high school. where is there still more opportunity to expose young people to this amazing game? John, we'll start with you.
Boy, that's a great question. In my mind, especially because I've been so involved in it, is just what we're planning on doing moving forward with the First Point Volleyball Foundation, which we haven't talked about a whole lot yet.
So let's explain that.
Yeah, we started a foundation 5 years ago that was trying to actually say, okay, if we intentionally put financial resources towards growing the sport, would that work? Can we do that? And it's proven to be, I think, remarkably successful. We've added over 60 scholarships for boys volleyball over the last 5 years. We've raised a little over $4 million to do that. We've added a number of even Division I programs. There was someone that I really respected in the sport that told me when we first got started, if you added one Division I program, this would be the biggest home run that's ever happened. And I think we've added 5, and not only that, but D2s and D3s and NAIA and our high school advocacy committee has been very impactful on a number of these states that were sanctioned this last year. Kenny Rogers, our board member, really led the charge there, and Wade Gerard, our CEO, has just done a phenomenal job. We have an incredible board. So we've essentially are wrapping up what we're terming Fund 1, which is this 5-year process where we've proven our bona fides, and we've proven that this effort is going to make a difference. Now it's not only Big Ten men's volleyball, but you have the Olympics in Los Angeles in 2028, which is, we all know, a huge boost to the potential exposure that we originally were talking about for our game. And so what can we do for that? And our board is now planning Fund 2, and what can that fund be? And we raised a little over $4 million in the first 5 years, but we're looking maybe something bigger, somewhere around the number around 20. And see if we can raise $20 million to go out there and really hit it out of the ballpark, And to me, that's, for me, the next phase. How do we look at the next 6 years? How do we go towards LA? How do we use that moment in time to really have this exponential growth, this tipping point for our game? And so that's where my mind goes, Dean. And, of course, once I go there, I've got a lot to talk about. There's a lot of things that go through my mind about what we can do.
John Speraw podcast for about 2.5 hours. I don't know if we have enough tape.
So I don't know if you want to dive into some of that. I would like to say thank you to all the coaches here. I think the men's game in general has always been very collegial. I think we've all been on the same page about how we support the same rules as the national team, so our players can go and make a seamless entry into the international game. I think we have conversations like this where we're really interested, I think genuinely, authentically, in the growth of a game that we all really love and we want to give back to. First Point, nobody knew what it was when it first started, and I think a lot of coaches were very supportive of anything that might work, and it's proven to be successful, and I just am grateful for everybody for pulling on the same rope.
Well, we appreciate your work on that as well. Jeff, are there places in the country, I mean, you live and coach in a very volleyball-centric place. So are there more places like that we can get to get great players for this sport?
I think the best way that I could orchestrate and answer that question is just to share a story of I was involved in a high performance in Iowa, and there's a connectivity. My wife played volleyball there, so I was able to go there to be a lead for the USA for their high performance. And the first year that I was there, they had just started boys volleyball high performance, and you literally had to teach them how to rotate. And putting a ball in and getting 2 contacts was just not going to happen. And you fast forward 10 years, they were competing for gold in the open division. And so there's a template out there for creating successful volleyball. And it took Iowa 10 years, and hearing all of these startups and all these different high school spaces, it's about a 10-year trajectory to becoming at a level that's going to be able to compete just with the talent alone, just with the growth alone. So when you go into a space like a Puerto Rico and you're looking for what could be next, and they have a professional league there as well, so they have a little bit of that, but some of the best players out of Puerto Rico have gone on to play in Italy, have gone on to play in other countries that you could consider to be top level. So there is those diamonds in the rough, so to speak. Maybe you're asking, how do you create that to be more of the norm? Yeah. And how do you elevate it to that? And that's a larger conversation. But I think you've seen it in a number of different countries. Like I don't want to reach too far here, but I think Italy and Russia are considered the top 2 leagues in the nation or the world right now. What did they do to get to that space? They've been at the top for a long period of time. They're courting it. What is the support? What is the infrastructure? How do they continue to orchestrate that? I think there's a template that can be utilized there for growth and creating that top level.
How do they balance their league to be somewhat domestic with their domestic players, and then what kind of level do they bring in the foreign players?
Yeah, but let's touch on that because they have the Champions League, and when I played, it was the Champions League and the Cup of Cups, and that means like the top teams of each country got together and competed for something in that, and then something like this Big Ten potentiality has the smackings or the touching of a Big Ten / maybe a Champions League. Can we orchestrate let's put these groups together early in the season. Let's put these teams together early in the season. There's ways to market that. There's ways to grow that. There's all kinds of different things that could spawn from that. And I know I'm just kind of off on the ethers on this,
I'm a big Premier League soccer football fan. So I think, and I think a lot of ways college athletics is starting to go in that model. You're right, where, you've got different levels. And so I think that's an exciting way to look at it. I think it's a little different to the average person who's been in college athletics. It's thought about that amateurism and all that stuff, but we're way past that in a lot of ways. And for somebody who's been here at Penn State for 35, 40 years, I kind of gave up that ghost a long time ago that, this is a whole new world. And I think that's part of it, too, is educating our fan base that still wants to hold on to that idea, these are kids that are just doing it for fun. No, there's a lot more to that. Maybe Kevin pick up on that a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting. Last night I was thinking that the Penn State crowd was as educated of a volleyball crowd as I've seen in the Midwest or East Coast. So credit to your fans and your home crowd. But I think it goes back to the exposure of the sport. I think whether it's Volleyball World, YouTube, or whatever it might be, there's a lot of different creative ways to educate people in the sport. I think I go back to coach education, to your original question of what's something I'd like to see more with the growth of the sport at the high school level. I think we can do more coach education because again, for example, I was really, really lucky. I got to coach and learn how to coach from some of the best coaches in the country at Pablo Obey and Travis Turner and Rich Polk. And, a lot of those, the kids out in the Midwest and East Coast don't have those same opportunities, but they're getting opportunities to play now. If we can get coach education to, help them learn from at the highest level, I think it's only going to help that exposure.
Going back to the original question about areas, I think the big one that probably has us most excited is Texas. I think Texas is an area that I would not be surprised in the next 10 years. You've got Merrick in your lineup. Third year, fourth. Can we get rid of him?
No.
By tonight.
No, I'm gonna find him another COVID
year. I don't think he should play tonight.
Okay.
But I think we're looking at Texas. We're looking at some of, again, I'll go back to my Title IX factor. I think we're looking at areas that have historically been very good with girls' high school, girls' club, and those younger brothers being drug along that turn out to be athletes that at the age of 7 or 8 are at a tournament and with their 11-year-old sister, they say, I'll pepper with you. And so I'm excited to see where Texas leads and kind of the entire true Midwest, the area that seems to be the boundary between East and
Missouri
West.
Is growing. I've seen it's
St.
funny
Louis.
because when I do the rosters and look at the rosters, I notice that stuff. Missouri, St. Louis area, both men and women's side.
And I think, in answering the original question, Dean, when you do look at the rosters now, I think you look at all of our teams and teams across the country, and you see more of a various areas of the country represented on rosters than ever before.
And a lot of foreign players coming here now, too, which I love that because they bring a different aspect that our domestic players can learn. We're getting long in the tooth here. Let's do one more subject, and that subject is we're going to go around the table and what you personally, each person, are going to do in the next several months to grow the game. What are you going to do, Jeff Nygaard, to grow the game?
To grow the game.
To grow this game. To grow this game to make it to be the, they call soccer the beautiful game. I think those of us that are in volleyball think it's a pretty beautiful game as well.
I think one of the things that we've really explored with our group and our team is that social media area and just the exposure of, it's not even just the wins and losses, it's who are the human beings that are in the sport that we love, and it's just, here's the day-to-day what we do, here's them enjoying the things that they love about this game, and then getting it out on our platforms so that there's an exposure and accessibility for the people that want to attach to it. And that's something that, especially in my day, didn't even exist. So now that's a huge part of just the lives of the young athletes that we have, and we're giving them more and more opportunities to be invested in that. Just the infrastructure we have just within our team itself is like every day is like, who do we want to have out there and who gets this opportunity and what are they providing in terms of content that we can put out there. So from that standpoint, just adding value to their own personal brands, to their own experience, having them have that opportunity just to enjoy being a student athlete and what does that all mean, that's a great space for these young men to explore.
Speaking of social media, we were commenting on Coach Speraw's social. You're killing it on the social media game there, Coach, of late. It's awesome, right?
A lot of support.
Yeah.
I agree with Jeff. I think the social media piece is really, really important, and I think we all wanted for years and years, I'm sure Pav and I talked about it over the years, just how come we can't be on ESPN? How come? Well, you had to pay for that time. You had to pay for that exposure in order to get it going. And now
even the NCAA level for a long time, they had to pay almost to get that slot to get the championships on.
Yeah, and I still feel like we need more of that from that NCAA support. I would prefer that. But here we have control over our own means of exposure advertising, and it's right there in social media, and I think we need to, I know I'm speaking for myself, I needed to understand that space a lot more. So the way for me to understand that space more was to dive in. And so now I really have, I tell you what, it's fascinating. And I don't know how I feel about it ultimately. I think there's the aspect of social media which I think has potentially a negative impact on the performance of our athletes because they're worried about external expectations. There's the aspect of social media which is, hey, look at me, which is really have a hard time with.
I do too.
But there is this opportunity to share what we're doing. There is an opportunity to tell an audience that loves volleyball, this is when we're playing our match. This is what our program is about. Recruits want to find out what are our values, what is our culture, how do we share that through social media, because that's how they receive messages these days. It's me trying to figure out how to meet them where they are.
Strike a balance,
not to be
right?
an old dog,
it's a balance thing to me, right?
Totally.
Yeah.
And so, in terms of growing the game over the next 30 days or 90 days, is that what you said? 3 months?
Several months, whatever.
We have an executive board meeting for First Point in the middle of March. I talk to Wade just about every day, so if it's a few months, I'll talk to Wade another 90 times. About what we can do to grow the game and add a couple board members, raise a little bit more money, and see if we can deploy that in a way that gives boys more opportunities to see and play our game. Kevin
Burch, something that you've been thinking about to grow the game. What can Kevin Burch do?
Well, I mean, kind of to my point earlier about coach education, Ohio's in a unique situation where, again, we get 40 new high school programs this year alone. So John's done an unbelievable job of growing the sport from the grassroots level. But especially in our situation, how can I make sure that we're, educating these coaches to really, expand that growth even more and give these kids great opportunities to learn. So doing coaches clinics for as cheap as possible, doing clinics that, are going to have CPR certification, things like that are going to increase the likelihood that, those coaches will stick to it and the ADs will stick to their commitment to have those programs. In addition to the media exposure, I think is super impactful. But I think one thing that we can do too is try to get these matches on Big Ten Network. Pav and I have talked a lot about that. I think that's the more exposure we can get on TV, the better off we're going to be.
Absolutely, Pav.
Kind of going off of what Kev just mentioned, I think one of the things that we want to do here is continue to market the physicality of the men's game. I mean, last night,
service speed and how high people are jumping would be a real cool thing to watch.
Last night in the Bruin Buckeye match, there are 3 Bruins out there that hit serves at 70 plus, and from
do they have to come along tonight too?
Yeah. and one of the things from the Olympics, when they flashed the serving speeds on, the highest one I saw was Zaitsev at about 76 miles per hour. What's the highest you've seen?
I thought that one that he got in Rio was closer to 80.
Was it 80?
But I don't know because I try not to think about it too much.
It's like I'm trying not to think about what we're going to face tonight. But we got the radar gun, we got the display. If it's not knocked down tonight, there you go. But I think we've got to show that the collegiate men's game is, especially to the young grassroots, you get bigger, stronger, faster, and I think that you sell the physicality of the men's game. Jeff and I were talking about it on the ride over here, and Jeff said, you could probably tie in all the information you get from the catapult system or the vert system to where now you can throw something up that shows Dylan Klein at a 40-inch vertical hitting a ball.
Right.
So we got to find at least in my opinion, we have to find ways to market how special the physicality is in the men's game.
Because the kids are used to that on their video games, right? When I score on FIFA, I can see all the how I scored with the right angle and the speed and all of that stuff. And so they're kind of ingrained to that. That's kind of an interesting thing, that by marketing the physicality through, we know in baseball, a 100-mile-per-hour fastball is a fast pitch. Get people to understand what that is like in volleyball in terms of what the parameters are.
They see what they see. Can we tell them what they're seeing?
Right.
And I think that's the big challenge that we all have.
I think there's a lot of components to that, Dean.
Yeah.
I mean, how we televise the matches is really, really important.
You need good people to explain it on the television or on
exactly
the feed,
right.
and I think we need better of that overall.
Agreed.
I'll volunteer. I'd like to get more involved.
We need
in
more
that
good
kind
people,
of stuff.
Dean.
All right, yeah.
And we need better television angles and people that understand. I think we need slow motion. I know we've all talked about instant replay quite a bit. Right now it's a deterrence, I think, to fan engagement. Right, but we can turn that if we do it right, and they've done that internationally. And so, putting it up on the big board so that everybody can see
like
what the referee
tennis now does, right? With the
right.
Hawkeye stuff,
and
right?
the Hawkeye is a little expensive, and I know that may be prohibitive for a lot of programs. But I think if you put that up on the board so that everybody could see it, so they're sitting there in their chair and understanding what it is, and not only that, but then they see the slow motion physicality. That's one thing you see on an instant replay on the touch is the guys' heads are above the net, And so I think that would also, aid to the marketing of how we show our game.
Well, we've come to the end, believe it or not. That was a fast almost hour. So I want to go around the room. Final thoughts. Jeff, this was the first time well, it's not the first time you've been here as a coach, but you never played at Rec Hall, which I thought was interesting,
No,
right?
I never got
And
to play
neither
there.
of you, right? As players. So Burch mentioned our great volleyball fans. It's a special place. And so I think, are you looking forward to coming back here more often now with this situation coming up with you guys joining the Big Ten?
100%. I love going to gyms that resonate with volleyball. You could just pick a place across the nation. It's like you go to Hawaii, and the fans there alone are so educated on the game that you just love playing there, and it's a privilege. And we actually got to play in the Stan Sheriff the year that it opened.
Yeah,
so,
right.
I mean, there's a lot of memories there. So coming to a place that has an institutionalized love of the game, and it's a pavilion that promotes the sport well, great lighting from a production standpoint. I mean, just alone, you just put it out there on TV, and that's a good volleyball product. So, no, I love coming here.
Yeah.
I love going to Ohio State. I love playing at UCLA for more than obvious reasons. So, I just love volleyball. It's like you just give me a rectangle and a net and a ball, I'm happy.
And there's the family feel of the sport like no other. And, John, I know you've experienced that on all levels. So that's what makes this special to me, right?
It is, and even sharing my own family with the experience. I love my girls, Brooklyn and Haley, running around the court after the volleyball match. But I think that general feel that we have in this room, Pav calls us up. We're going to do a podcast, talk about how we're going to look and grow the game, and
Wickedly early in the morning after a match,
especially with the
taking time away
change.
from pass and serve and scouting, right? All that stuff, right?
I think it's something that we all really enjoy. I mean, I think
Yeah.
we genuinely enjoy each other's company, and we are all really, I think, supportive. We all love the game. It's given us our careers, all these experiences that we've all shared, and I think all of us would like to share that opportunity with someone that's going to come after us, and I think we're all engaged in that process.
And part of that, Kevin, you're the youngest guy here, but yet, like you said, you we're amongst coaches, older, more experienced coaches that have always been willing to share, and that's the other part of this. Nobody in this side of the sport, I feel, tries to hold anything back. It's like, I don't have the secret sauce, and I don't want to share it with you. We discuss what works for us and give those ideas out freely.
Yeah, I mean, these types of matches are the matches that you remember at the end of the year for a lot of reasons, and one of them is just we get along really well. We like spending time together and learning from each other. I mean, I think we can all say that we've learned a ton from just whether it's watching video or asking questions, or there's so many things that we can learn from each other, and I think that's the greatest part about our sport and our side of the sport. But yeah, I think for our student athletes too, this is the weekend that they remember quite a bit, and these are great memories and great experiences. So it's always fun to be able to provide that for our guys.
And I know, Pav, you're proud to show off Penn State and its volleyball acumen and how we like to put on these kinds of events. I know that makes you proud.
I've learned something. I finally have been searching all my life to have something in common with the two great players that these guys were internationally, Olympically. Yeah. When I played at Penn State, I never played at Rec Hall either. So,
well, on that note, for my good friends, Jeff Nygaard, John Speraw, Kevin Burch, and Mark Pavlik, it's been a pleasure. We hope you've enjoyed it. Lots of great discussion. And we hope that you get out and support men's volleyball on the collegiate level, whatever level. If you got questions, they will be happy to answer them, I'm sure. Just contact us, and we really enjoyed this. For all of us, with the Big Ten Pac-12 Challenge and our roundtable this year, we thank you for joining us. I'm Dean DeVore. Have a great day. Thanks for supporting men's volleyball.